We're starting with our man, Gordon Hayward, who, according to a report, could take the Al Horford approach. They're calling it an opt-out.
We don't like hearing that name.
Just to refresh everybody, in case you don't remember what Al Horford did, everyone assumed he'd opt in and or play ball, tear up his deal, and re-sign a new one, a team-friendly deal, because he's Al. He's awesome. He loves it here. And he didn't. And it almost screwed the Celtics. It ended up being actually a fortuitous thing that Horford left, and they don't have him on the books right now for 3 or 4 years. But Hayward might be looking to do the same thing, and this could be bad for a lot of reasons.
You know what's the scary thing there is that the Atlanta Hawks are a team that Zach Lowe mentioned on that podcast where a lot of this guy.
Right, this was with Lowe and Simmons for everybody out there.
All right, Bobby Marks. Bobby Marks had a lot of the cap stuff there. So
yeah, but Lowe was saying the vibe around, just to set the scene for everybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, Lowe was saying the vibe around Hayward is odd, and he can't quite place it, but that's what he compared it to Horford, which is nobody's quite get to happen here, but there's a vibe that he might be sniffing around, looking at his market right now, and wondering if when free agency comes, well, he's thinking, is the money out there that I don't know is going to be out there or not? Everyone's assuming the 36 million is the most he's going to get, and there's a vibe that he might be seeing it. Maybe I can lock something up right now. So, Bobby, go ahead. But yeah, I just wanted to provide background context for people.
This links into some of the league stuff that we read about before we got on here too. The fact that a lot of the players this year aren't going to get their number salary. So Hayward, if he opted in, was going to be getting 34 million. He could lose as much as 30% of that, and maybe more with the numbers that we saw today. So it's in his interest financially to try to find some long-term guaranteed money beyond this year. So I think it's no mistake that there's a lot of noise around him right now, because there is a team in the Atlanta Hawks that I think is more intriguing for him than I think we gave credit to previously. They're not good, but they have 44 million in cap space. There's not a lot of players out there that they can kick that cap space back to future years with 1-year deals. And honestly, you look at this free agent market, Hayward's the best player, and it's not even close.
Van Vliet maybe, but I'm with you. He's up there. Yeah, no question. That's a good point, Bobby. Yeah, I think if you're the Atlanta Hawks too, you want someone like Hayward, right? You want someone who could come in there, veteran experience, isn't going to be expected to be one of the top guys, mentor these young guys, because Atlanta, they believe they're there. They're ready to compete in the playoffs or at least take that next step. And I think Gordon Hayward would certainly push them forward, and especially what was the kind of money he's commanding. I mean, for what you're getting out of him, it's a pretty valuable contract moving forward. Of course, you have to hope he doesn't get hurt. That's the big what if here. But also another team that's out there who is not, it's not a team that everyone's crazy about. They're sort of one of the laughing stocks of the league. That's the New York Knicks. No question, the New York Knicks are going to do their best to go out and get someone like Fred VanVleet. But if they strike out, what's wrong with someone like Gordon Hayward, especially someone like Gordon Hayward who could essentially go there and say, I don't know, I don't want to call it the Marcus Morris route, because I think he'd have to stay there for more than 1 year, but maybe he could sort of add some, value to his name moving forward after a year or two. You go to New York, you got young talent, another similar situation. I mean, I don't know if they're quite far along compared to New York, and compared to Atlanta and Trae Young, but they do have a couple pieces in there. Robinson's a big man. Obviously RJ Barrett is their future. So there's a couple of options. I mean, those are the only two teams realistically I think could step up to the table and offer Hayward a 3-year deal that's not going to break the bank.
Okay, but here's my question: does it make sense for Gordon Hayward? Is it just about money for Gordon Hayward? Because if it was just about money, wouldn't he have just re-signed with the Utah Jazz? I mean, isn't there a little bit more to the fit, the comfortability? He's got a big family now, 4 kids and a wife, and I know that family's huge for him. The Knicks are a tough organization to just jump in. I mean, talk about a team.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
With a lot of pressure, screwy culture. Tough place to be, New York City, during a pandemic on top of it all.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm not sure if that's a good fit. Now, if you're Gordon Hayward, you opt out knowing something, because
Hayward's not a New York kind of guy too. And you got
What about Robin though? Hey, you know the vibes. Come on, Robin Hayward.
I don't see New York.
Dude, she's in Indiana.
So
the thing. If you're Gordon Hayward, there's a lot of, even if you're the Boston Celtics, there's a lot of other variables at play here. I mean, the article that just came out today from Woj and Lowe was talking about the reported income from the NBA and the loss that they took how that could potentially affect the salary cap or not affect it if they're going to find ways to keep it constant. But if you're Gordon Hayward, if you're the Boston Celtics, how does that affect your negotiations and what you're willing to pay down the road when you're not, or if you're Gordon Hayward, what you're willing to risk down the road if you're not sure where this cap is heading in the next couple of years? Because if they play a season without fans again, they're going to lose a ton of money. I mean, that just based on the numbers we saw today.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute because that is going to impact some things. But I mean, wouldn't that theoretically mean that Hayward, there's not going to be money out there for him next year? That to me, if
right.
So I for me, it's twofold. I don't see it mainly because he needs to show something. He's still a risk out there. I just don't see that. Yeah, like Bobby, you say he's the best player out there. Maybe, like he hasn't put together a complete season in 4 years. That's a big deal.
Before the shutdown, it's easy to forget that if you're watching the Celtics, but if you're looking at things from a different perspective, like a thirsty team like the Knicks or the Hawks, you're like, wait a minute, this guy could really help us out.
You really think
Gordon Hayward, he returned also? That's an encouraging sign.
Do you think Gordon Hayward puts one of these teams over the top? Like, to me, I don't see it at all.
I think he's closer than a lot of guys out there.
The guy you spend, if you're another team. Hayward to me is the guy, if you're another team, you spend way more money than the value you're getting in order to bring him over. He's the type of guy that you're like, oh, we got somebody. And then fans are going to be like, we're paying this guy what? Like, I just don't. He's not that guy. He's not that guy. Well, he's good and he has value. And here's the thing. Two things can be true. The Celtics can't replace him, even if he is overpaid here. And they don't get his money if he walks out the door. So it's a freaking disaster if he leaves. It's bad. The Celtics need him to stay, at least so they have the asset or the money or his value, because they can't replace it with the $8 million they're going to have to sign somebody if he leaves. He's immensely valuable to the Celtics. Some other team you think is going to pony up $30 million for this guy? I can't see it. I can't see it.
The other thing is when you were comparing Al Horford to Gordon Hayward situation.
I'm not going to take $30 million, man. It's a completely different situation.
What do you think it is?
20 average, 30, 3 years, 60-something million.
But that's what we're talking about.
Why would he opt out then?
That's what we're telling the Celtics. The Celtics comes down to tomorrow.
It comes down to him getting 60 to 75 million guaranteed over multiple years
75
versus
over 3 or more
versus that one time.
Okay.
And that 34 isn't 34 like we keep saying. And that's the other thing too. Like I think ultimately the best thing that the Celtics and Hayward can get done here is a 2-3 year deal that gets him some guaranteed money long term and doesn't have that, 34 million possibly expiring that John mentioned hanging over them all year, because you know what that's going to lead to? Are they trading Hayward? Are they trading Hayward every single week all year? And all of a sudden that becomes another cloud over the team. There's risk to signing him long term. We know the injuries. We don't even know how he's going to recover from this last one, even though it seems relatively minor. Maybe it takes him some time to get back again. So there's risk if you do this now. I just think it's the least riskiest of all of these, because if you lose him, it's a disaster.
It's definitely.
Yeah, but Bobby, it also could be a disaster in a couple of years. I mean, look, the money, we don't know what's going to look like in a couple of years.
Well, so Kemba could be too. I think you're maximizing right now.
Maximize who?
Okay.
The team.
Yeah, but how do you lock in all those guys? We're talking about 4 players making well over $25 million. This is not going to work.
Well, I think you could get him back.
Tatum's going to get the bag, right? We all agree with that? I mean, unless you guys
for sure.
Well, you end up paying crazy.
Talking something else.
You end up paying a crazy tax if you're the Boston Celtics.
That's the other thing too. The team doesn't know where the tax is,
but the
that kills everybody.
It's a bad thing, but at the end of the day, it's better than locking him in for 3 years. I'm sorry, I said it. Okay, Celtics fans, kill me, like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, let's face it, they don't want to do this. Kemba Walker, Tatum, Jaylen Brown. You got Jaylen Brown for a good price. You got Marcus Smart.
It's not that this way.
We'll get into him later, but
you can't replace him.
I get that, John. But if he doesn't opt in, what are you going to do?
Let's talk about the trade. Let's talk about the trade options.
We talked about the walks. Jimmy must speak.
I think what we should do, most likely to least likely scenarios, and I feel like it's still unlikely for him to opt out, because I think
I think he might do it.
Okay, fine.
He
We
might
can
too.
talk
You
about
don't
it.
want that to happen, but
All right, Jimmy, you rank them.
No, I just want to say, sure. I think the first thing I think he opts in for this final year. It's a lot of money. It allows the Celtics.
It's not 34 though. It could be
How
like
much?
26, 24 even. Like they're gonna take like 30-40% out of its players' salaries this year.
look, I'm saying that's the best case scenario for the Celtics. But
Okay.
if he opts out, don't the world's not over for the Celtics.
It is.
It's
It was
not.
how, John? Like how,
Yes, it is. It
Yeah.
definitely is, Josue.
Because that was the worst thing.
If
Just
he
like,
opts out,
that production walks out the door, and you're left with $7 million to replace.
You could
the
have
guy
Semi
who-
Ojale in the starting
a
lineup.
fringe
next
Yeah,
all
year.
but
star.
there's still the MLE. You don't know what's going to happen with Cantor. I mean, listen, like obviously
Cantor.
you can't replace that.
Cantor's gone. Cantor, they're gonna
Right, but they can either have the full. They can either have the full MLE or go
they'll have
out.
the full MLE. Yeah.
So you prefer to lock him in and then move
He's
forward.
really good, Josue. He is.
No, I understand that, but
For 3
realistically,
years,
you're gonna lock in. How are you gonna lock it? So you're
I'm
gonna
doing it.
what to flip him?
you tear
next 2
this.
years?
No, two things happen. You tear this up, and you sign him for 3 years. Now you have a salary you can trade for the next 2 and 3 years, which is great. And a player who you can't possibly replace for the amount of money you'll have if he walks. It's a no-brainer that they would sign him to an extension. It's a no-brainer.
I think they
I'd
would
be
too.
stunned
And,
if
like,
they're-
But at what price though? That's the thing, John. I mean,
I think it's gonna
of course, we
be.
don't know if the Hawks and Knicks are really that interested. But if the price is up there, you willing to see the Celtics do that? To
So
match-
here's the thing. I did the math last night. If you sign him to 20 to 24 million for this year, the Celtics could actually avoid the luxury tax this year if they trade the 30th pick or send it overseas.
Can
so
I tell
like
you
they
how
could come in
little I
just
care
below
about
that.
luxury taxes?
No, but if that matters in
These
this
are
world,
billionaires. Pay luxury taxes. Pay some taxes. Pay any tax.
no, I
don't
agree.
care.
I agree. But if it
But when
does
you pay
matter,
it-
then
when you pay it for like 3 years in a row,
Yeah.
now you're paying even more on top of it.
Who
and-
cares?
Well, I
this
don't
is-
care, but
This
I
is
mean,
their
I'm playing-
ploy. Okay.
Somebody might care.
This
Somebody
is-
might care.
This is
If they're
this
not
is
good
my
enough to win, I guarantee you Wick will care.
where does Wick make his
Owners-
money from?
Owners have professional teams like they have, my third yacht.
Yeah,
It's
well, go
just-
talk to John Henry about that then, because I'm
It's
looking
just-
at Mookie Betts in a Dodgers
yeah,
uniform.
he's in the
You're in
Nobody
it
cares.
to have fun and to
Jordan.
win. Money doesn't matter. Spend, spend, spend. I don't want to hear luxury
Sure.
tax.
But it's
Do
a
what
thing.
it takes. Okay.
I get it.
I will never watch another baseball game for the rest of my life because the Red Sox traded away Mookie Betts to get under a luxury tax threshold.
All right then.
Okay, done. Owners, I don't want to hear tax. Do what it takes. Okay,
Fine.
pay the penalties, sign the guy, have the best team
But
possible.
if you're a GM, I don't know if you're looking at Gordon Hayward the way that the Sixers looked at Al Horford. I think part of the Sixers signing Al Horford was taking him away from the Celtics, right? I mean, unless there's a contender that I'm not thinking of that's going to be chomping at the bit to scoop up Gordon Hayward, he might not have that same market, even if he is the best free agent or one of the best free agents in the class. I think that says more about the class than it says about Gordon Hayward. And I think teams are going to be hesitant to lock themselves up into a heavy deal, not knowing if the salary cap's going to shrink on them.
His leverage isn't huge, but I do think the opt-out case is pretty strong. He prevents himself from getting traded
But
to
he could
any
opt out
possible
to-
destination.
Could he opt out to resign?
Yeah,
to resign
that's
with the
how
Celtics?
that's how he would do it. And I don't think it
You
makes
opt
sense.
out and re-sign a new 3-year deal in the 20-something million range.
Now,
Now the Celtics
can do that because they have his rights.
The Celtics might have to go higher than they want to there. Bernardoni said 60 overall. I think it could be closer to 75 if the Hawks get
60
involved.
is the deal we want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, 60 sounds right.
That might be low. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you said 70. I think 70. But again,
Because-
what do we know? We thought Horford was in the bag for what we were talking about.
Oh, and he was 130.
But we thought
out of nowhere.
Horford was gonna do a 3 and 60 or something like that, and everyone was like, everyone will be happy with that, right? And he's like, fuck that. I've got, and then he went and signed what he signed. Nobody saw that coming. So you're right, Bobby. It only takes one. It takes one to set the market. And if he is the best player out there and you have one team that's like, I got to do something, you're right. One team can set the market. And if one team is willing to go 100 million guaranteed over 3, That's hard.
That's the thing. That, if you're the Atlanta Hawks, I mean, do you realistically do that? And that's the team that I thought of when Jaylen Brown was up. I was like, if the Celtics don't lock in Jaylen, he could go to Atlanta, and luckily, or at least
Jaylen Brown is not Gordon Hayward. Jaylen Brown is not Gordon.
Right,
Jaylen
that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm saying. That kind of money to go from Jaylen to Hayward, that's a tough thing if you're Atlanta. So maybe they're not all that.
We think of him as Hayward on the Celtics. If he was a more central figure on a team, I think he could be worth the price because, ultimately he's just kind of a dish out secondary ball handler on the Celtics. He's a luxury to them. Whereas on another team like the Hawks or even the Cavaliers who have shown interest in him, he would be a central figure on a young team. The question is, does he want to go to a loser? Does he want to go to a place like Cleveland?
He's a second option on a bad team. I still,
Cleveland.
I don't think that's in him anymore.
Does he think that? Maybe this is a way for him.
It doesn't matter. You're looking at NBA. You're looking at NBA GMs. Is an NBA GM thinking that I could build around Gordon Hayward? I don't think so anymore.
So
he's a nice piece.